Stop scrolling. This is not a drill. I know the title of this video sounds crazy, but I swear every word is true. My ex-fiance, Ethan, the guy who was supposed to be my husband, burned my wedding dress. Not in some accidental, oops, I left the iron on kind of way. No, he set it on fire as a final act of pure, messy revenge. And the best part? I took the ashes, the literal, smoky, ruined remains of my $12,000 gown, turned them into a piece of art, and sold that finished piece for thousands. Enough to pay for my new apartment, actually. You think you know crazy ex stories? You have no idea. Stick around, because the journey from bridal satin to bank account is way wilder than you think. Okay, let's go back 6 months. The breakup was brutal. We'd been together for 5 years. The wedding was 3 weeks away. I called it off because I found out he was doing something truly unforgivable. Something that made every memory we had feel completely fake. I'm not going to get into the messy details of his betrayal, but trust me, when I walked away, I left nothing on the table. He was furious. I mean, meltdown screaming at the sky furious. He wanted me to hurt as much as he felt he was hurting. We had one final text exchange. It was about the things I'd left at our place. I said, just send the boxes to my mom's house. Everything else is yours. He texted back, except for one thing. It's too late now. I didn't know what he meant. I didn't think about it. I was just done. Then about an hour later, I got a notification. It was from a security camera app I still had on my phone, one that pointed at the guest room door where the dress was hanging in a giant garment bag. I swiped it open, thinking maybe a delivery guy was there. What I saw wasn't a delivery. It was Ethan. He was standing in the middle of the room, the dress, a masterpiece of ivory silk and French lace that took 8 months to create. My literal childhood dream dress was pulled out of the bag. He held a bottle of lighter fluid. The camera was silent, but I didn't need sound. I saw him douse the satin. He didn't hesitate. He pulled out a cheap plastic lighter, the kind you buy at a gas station, and with a flick of his wrist, he lit it. I watched the screen as the flames caught the hem, then crawled up the fabric like a monster. The expensive lace shriveled first, turning black in an instant. The silk just melted, dripping fire onto the hardwood floor. It smelled, even through the screen, like a chemical fire, a spoiled hope. In less than 60 seconds, my $12,000 dress, my symbol of a future I thought was real, was a pile of smoldering, black, disgusting garbage. He just stood there, watching it burn, and then he walked away, leaving the camera to record the smoke detectors screaming. I didn't call the police immediately. I didn't scream or cry. I just felt cold, empty. He didn't just burn the dress. He burned the one thing I couldn't easily replace, the one thing that still felt like a piece of my old life. When I finally got myself together, I called the police. Yes, burning a wedding dress is arson and destruction of property, but the legal process was a joke. I had the video, the proof, everything. But because the marriage was called off and because Ethan still technically lived in the house, her lawyer argued it was a dispute over communal property and a moment of temporary emotional distress. They tried to make it sound like he was the victim and I was just being dramatic. I got my lawyers involved. I filed a police report. I spent a week trying to figure out how to put a monetary value on what he'd ruined. I spent hours staring at the pile of ashes and charred fabric that the police let me retrieve. They were in a big, heavy-duty black trash bag. It was surreal. This thing that was supposed to represent the happiest day of my life was now sitting in my mom's garage waiting to be used as evidence. The real low point wasn't the police or the lawyers, but it was the absolute crushing weight of failure. Every time someone asked about the wedding, I had to choke out the words, "It's off," and "he burned the dress." The pity in their eyes was almost worse than the anger. It felt like I was the failure, Like my whole love story, my whole future had been reduced to a heap of ashes. I remember standing in the garage one afternoon looking at that bag. It was full of black soot, tiny bits of melted zipper, and flakes of white that used to be the most beautiful lace I'd ever seen. It was heartbreaking. I wanted to scream, to bury it, to just forget it existed. But then something clicked. You know how they say the best revenge is living well? Well, that felt too slow. I wanted something loud, something visible, something that proved he hadn't destroyed me. He had just given me a very expensive, very unique raw material. I'm an artist. Not professionally, but I studied painting in college. I've always messed around with abstract stuff, resin, mixed media, textured paints. And that's when the idea slammed into me like a freight train. The ashes. The physical, molecular remains of the dress were still there. They were evidence of the destruction, but they could also be the foundation of something new. He thought he was getting the final word with fire. I decided I'd get the last word with art. I called my best friend, Sarah, who's an incredible painter. I explained the whole crazy idea. I'm going to make art from the ashes of my wedding dress. I want to encapsulate the whole miserable experience, but turn it into something beautiful and strong. Sarah, bless her heart, didn't even skip a beat. She said, "Cassidy, that is genius. We need to document the whole process. This isn't just art. It's a story of survival. You need a massive canvas, something that demands attention." So the new mission began, Operation Phoenix. The first step was the weirdest, most emotionally draining thing I've ever done, separating the ashes. The trash bag was a mess. It had chunks of melted fabric, burnt metal grommets, and a ton of black soot. I needed pure, fine ash. So I set up a workstation in my mom's backyard shed. I put on gloves and a mask. It felt like a forensic investigation. I used a series of 3 different fine mesh sieves, the kind you use for bacon, to sift through the remains. For 2 full days, I sat there shaking that sieve. The fine, velvety black powder, the pure ash, fell into a massive ceramic bowl. It was incredibly personal. Every spoonful I sifted felt like I was processing the trauma, sifting through the bad memories to find the tiny, usable kernel of power inside. I ended up with nearly a pound of this fine, pure ash. It was soft like flour, but absolutely jet black, heavy with the weight of what it used to be. The unburned silk that was left, the pieces that had been protected by the garment bag, I kept those too. I had a second element, the stark, pure white of the intended future contrasted with the absolute black of the destroyed past. Now for the art part. I bought the canvas I could find, 4 feet by 6 feet. It was massive. I wanted anyone who saw this piece to feel overwhelmed by its size. This was a statement, not a pleasant painting for a living room wall. The materials, trial and error. I started experimenting with binders. Ash doesn't just stick to a canvas. It's too fine. I tried simple acrylic medium, but the black color was muted, turning a dull grayish brown. It looked depressing, not powerful. It looked like sadness. I spent a week watching YouTube tutorials about working with pigment and resin. The answer was a thick, high-gloss epoxy resin. I needed a medium that would make the ash look like obsidian, like polished black stone. My first attempt was a disaster. I mixed the ash into a small batch of resin, but I used too much ash. The mixture hardened too quickly and cracked, making it look like a broken mirror. I wanted to represent the brokenness, sure, but not like this. It needed to be intentional. On the second attempt, I got it right. A 3-to-1 ratio of clear resin to ash powder. It created a thick, dark, glossy paste. It wasn't black paint. It was pure, molten shadow. I didn't want to just smear the ash paste on the canvas. The canvas needed texture. So I started by laying down a thick foundation of plaster and marble dust. This was the unspoiled foundation, the life before the fire. I sculpted it into swirling, powerful contours. It looked like a white hurricane. This represented the chaos and the potential of my life. The final painting wasn't just abstract, it told a clear story. I called it Inheritance of Ash.
It was divided into 3 visual sections, flowing together like a continuous story. The storm, bottom left, this was the chaos of the breakup. I painted this area with the pure white plaster, swirling aggressively. Into this section, I embedded tiny, recognizable, but burnt pieces of the dress. A small charred zipper pull, a melted plastic button. It's the visual sign of the violence that started everything. It was sharp, messy, and painful to look at. The void, center. This is where the magic happened. This central, massive section was painted entirely with the ash resin mix. I didn't brush it on, I poured it. I used a trowel to carve deep valleys and ridges into the wet black material. When it dried, it was pitch black, deeply textured, and incredibly shiny, like a scar you can't look away from. This section was about the despair, the void, the feeling that everything was ruined. But here's the twist. In the center of the void, I took the few unburnt scraps of the lace, the pristine white pieces that survived, and carefully layered them into the resin. They looked like stars in a black galaxy. They were the small signs of my own unburnable strength. The rebirth, top right. The piece had to end with hope, right? This section was a blast of color. I used a vibrant metallic gold and a fiery deep crimson. I poured these colors over the black ash, allowing the gold to stream down like tears turning to liquid metal. I used a heat gun to push the gold pigment so it looked like wings unfurling, like a phoenix taking flight. The gold wasn't covering the ash, it was rising from it. The message was clear. My new beginning wasn't despite the destruction, it was fueled by it. When it was finally finished, the canvas weighed almost 50 pounds. It was heavy, dark, violent, and utterly beautiful. It felt like a piece of my soul was plastered on that wall. It took 2 weeks to dry completely. Every day, I went into that shed and just stared at it. It was the physical proof that Ethan didn't break me. He just provided the ingredients for my masterpiece. He had intended to create a pile of garbage, and I had created my own freedom. I didn't want to just sell it quietly. The whole point was the message. Ethan needed to see it. The whole world needed to see it. I took the best professional photos I could. I posted the pictures of the final piece on Instagram and an online art forum. I wrote the description simply. Title, Inheritance of Ash. Medium, Wedding Dress Ash, Epoxy Resin, Plaster, Acrylic. Statement, a study in destruction and renewal. The raw material is the physical remains of a wedding gown burned by an ex-fiancé. The gold is the fire that gives the phoenix new life. I posted it at 9 a.m. on a Monday. I didn't tag Ethan. I didn't mention his name. I didn't need to. Our small town knew the story. By noon, my phone was basically melting. The post had been shared thousands of times. It wasn't just the art world that was interested. It was women everywhere who had dealt with toxic breakups. The comments were wild. This is the greatest revenge story of all time. You tried to burn your life and you turned it into pure gold. The ashes are literally his mistake, and they look gorgeous. Of course, Ethan saw it. At 3 p.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. I picked it up, expecting it to be a gallery or a buyer. Cassidy, what is wrong with you? It was Ethan. His voice was shaking, not with rage, but with pure, humiliated panic. I saw the picture. That's my house. That's my... I cut him off. It was my dress, Ethan. Now it's my artwork. It's what you left me, and I used it to make something incredible. It's a gift, actually. You provided the raw material, and I provided the talent. He started to sputter. You can't do this. That's defamation. You're making me look crazy. You can't tell people that. You need to take it down right now. I just laughed, a real genuine laugh that came from deep down. I haven't mentioned your name, Ethan. I've just told the truth about a pile of ash. Why are you so worried? Does it hit too close to home? Does the art make you feel something you didn't think you would? Is that what you were going for when you did your little bonfire? He went quiet. I could hear him breathing heavily on the line. I didn't give him a chance to recover. Listen closely, I said. You thought you destroyed my future. You thought you could turn my wedding day into a nightmare. You didn't. You just gave me a new career path. Now, get used to seeing the results of your temper tantrum everywhere, because this is just the beginning. Then I hung up, blocked his number immediately. The satisfying click was the sound of my emotional closure. The day after the post went viral, I received 5 genuine inquiries from galleries and private collectors. A story this dramatic, attached to a piece of art that is literally a product of revenge, is commercial gold. The idea was worth more than the materials. One collector, a woman in New York who had a history of buying statement pieces, was really interested. She didn't just want to buy the painting, she wanted to buy the story. She asked me, "What's the price?" I went with a number that felt ridiculous, a number that would make Ethan choke. I factored in the original cost of the dress, the emotional labor, and the viral attention. I quoted her $9,500. It took her 30 minutes to email back. She didn't haggle. She just said, "I'll take it. And I'd like you to name the series after this piece." I was stunned. I sat there staring at the number on my screen. $9,500. My ruined dress, my heartbreak, my anger, all transformed into a wire transfer sitting in my bank account. I used that money to pay my legal bills from the divorce, which was satisfying. But more importantly, I put a deposit down on a fantastic apartment with a huge studio space, a space where I can create without any of Ethan's negative energy. The collector, who became a friend, told me something that really stuck with me. She said, "Cassidy, that painting isn't about hate. It's about taking the one thing a person tried to burn, your future, and forging it into something unbreakable. You created a permanent monument to your own resilience." That's the thing I want you to get from this story. Ethan tried to use fire to erase me. He succeeded only in changing my form. He thought he was giving me trauma. I realized he was giving me a story. And stories, when told well, are worth a lot of money. The final piece is now hanging in a loft apartment in Manhattan. It's no longer just a pile of ashes. It's a talking point. It's a powerful symbol. It's what happens when you decide that someone else's bitterness won't be the end of your story. So here's my message to anyone dealing with a breakup, a betrayal, or a messy situation where someone tried to hurt you. Don't bury the pain. Don't throw it away. Look closely at the worst things they did to you. Look at the ashes they left behind. Can you use it? Can you rebuild? Can you turn it into your kind of art? Can you find the thing that they destroyed and transform it into the single best, most unexpected victory of your life? Because when I look back, I realized that when Ethan set fire to that dress, he didn't ruin my life. He essentially handed me a very generous, very artistic severance package. He burned the dress. I sold the ashes. And that's what true closure feels like.